Somehow, some way, Ja Morant continues to make this situation much worse than it needs to be. I'm pretty sure most people know what's going on, but just briefly, the Grizzlies matched up with the Lakers on Friday. They not only lost, but Ja played terrible, so bad that it was evident that something was wrong with him. They then asked him in post-game, yo, what's going on? And he effectively just threw his coaches underneath the bus. Because of the outburst, they decided to suspend him for a game. He missed the Toronto game. Now back in Detroit, and a lot of people are wondering, okay, how is Ja going to respond? Because I do think that a lot of people have been very fair in their criticism towards Ja throughout this entire situation, but Ja performed the way in which Ja does in a very immature fashion, not only on the court, but also off the court as well. So not only do the Grizzlies end up losing, because that's what ended up happening, they end up losing the game. They end up losing, what's the final score of this game? 114 to 106. But also in this game, at some point, they were down by like 20 points. So there it is right there. They were down by like 21 points in the middle of the third quarter. And specifically, Ja shot terrible from the field, terrible from behind the arc, turned the ball over 5 times, and ended the night with 18 points and 10 assists. Overall, I thought his playmaking was fine. He was creating open opportunities for his teammates, but everything else was just terrible. Like, defense just wasn't there, which is normal for Ja, but the shot making was egregiously bad. He shot like 4 for 12 on shots outside of 8 feet from the basket or outside of the restricted area specifically, and he only shot 1 for 4 at the rim. And the one basket that he made, if I'm not mistaken, I feel as if like when I was watching this game, the only shot that he made at the rim was like a fast break dunk. I could be tripping though, if I'm not mistaken. I think this is the only shot he made at the rim. Yeah, so that's it. That's the only shot he made at the rim. Now, to be fair to Ja, Cade played really great defensively, and so did Asar Thompson. So, you know, there's some really good defenders out in Detroit, but that also kind of begs a bigger question that a lot of people don't want to ask. But that's a little bit later on. However, after the game, of course, the media members wanted to know what's going on, his feelings about the whole situation, because this is the first time they've been able to talk to him since everything transpired. And yeah, Ja just like continues to make this situation much worse than what it really needs to be.
You and the coaching staff able to talk about what happened Friday and move on?
Y'all asked that question to them, huh?
What about for you?
Y'all asked that question, so y'all know the answer to that.
Do you feel like everything's been resolved?
Yeah. They told y'all that, right?
Well, yeah, but
There
we
you
didn't
go.
hear it from you.
Obviously, they can't go and tell y'all something I ain't say.
You feel like you get the same joy right now that we used to see from you?
No.
Why not?
What can be done to get it back?
We'll see.
Do you think you have a good relationship with the franchise
Yeah.
in general?
Yeah. They told y'all that, right?
I didn't say anything about that.
If I had a good relationship, I wouldn't talk to him at all. So, and we had our combos over these.
Do you have any regrets about the way you played on Friday night in the second half?
You said what?
Do you have any regrets about the way you played in the game? I'm not talking about the
That's your
post-game
home
stuff.
run question? Sound like a bait question.
Ja, you guys went down by 21, but came all the way back with a chance to make it a one-possession game. Just talk about the comeback and then what fell short towards the end.
The guys, they just picked it up. Getting to play harder, more intensity, was able to get some stops, convert on the other end. That allowed us to, cut the game. What you said, 3?
Yeah.
The 3, and then, late, Cade went and, do what a guy for his team's supposed to do, win the game.
Oh man, you know what's even crazier? I think that like in that game as well, he ended up turning the ball over late, trying to drive on Asar, and then he just ended up turning the ball over. But I ain't gonna hold you, bro. It's so hard to like defend Ja in these situations, because even in the video that I made, I tried my hardest not to make it like this big ordeal and talk about previous suspensions and how he's just very immature as someone who's trying to be the face of a franchise and a quote unquote leader. Even though I think I'd have been very much so right to criticize him in that fashion, I just don't feel comfortable doing that because I don't know what's going on in the locker room. But when news breaks, the head coach is questioning your leadership skills, then I do think you open up the runway of criticizing your mentality, your leadership, et cetera, like all the intangibles. But even when I like try my hardest not to do those things, just because I feel like I'm not in position to do so, like what is that? Like what are we doing? Like genuinely speaking, what are we doing? You're getting asked questions that are very tame questions, especially for someone who gave very little effort in a winnable game against the Los Angeles Lakers. And even in this game, you could very well argue for multiple stretches, bro, the Grizzlies look better better without him on the floor yet again. So this idea that like, oh my God, how like, why y'all asking me this question? Y'all ask them that? Why y'all asking me that? Like, bro, come on, bro. You're the face of the franchise. You're going to get these questions. If you don't want to be put in positions to where you have to be asked tough questions, then stop being immature and just go out there and just handle your business like a man. I don't understand, and I'm quite frankly, even as a fan, as someone who's very pro player, I'm getting kind of tired of having a cape for people who out there making $40+ million. I'm like, bro, this is what comes with everything that you are getting paid for in an organization that is bent over backwards. And also, quite frankly, they've had to answer very tough questions for your actions as well. So now all of a sudden, when now we're asking you about your own actions, you now have an attitude and you're throwing a hissy fit about, oh, I don't know. Y'all asked them that. Why you asked me that? Like, because you're the player. You're the player. You are the one. You're the one who's performing poorly. You're the one who gave poor effort. So we're talking to you right now. Why? I'm not. Who cares about what they said? What's up with you? And then for you sit there and say, oh, what about your joy? You're not playing with that much joy. No, I'm not. Like, nigga, what? What are you talking about? You're not playing with, bro. I don't understand how you can get to a point in your career where you've made it to the higher heights and you're talking about how you're not playing with any joy. You've lost your joy all of a sudden. Like, bro, like, what are you doing, bro? The way you're handling this is so immature, and it's also very consistent in the vein in all of your decisions that you have made over the course of the last 2 to 3 years now. This has kind of been who you have been as a quote-unquote leader or someone who's supposed to be the face of the franchise. This has been you. And again, as someone who I try my hardest not to criticize and talk about intangibles or things that I cannot, measure and calculate just by looking at the game or other things that I cannot tangibly see. I try to stay away from those type of conversations because I just don't know. I'm just this fat nigga that's talking basketball. But damn, bro, when you make it this painfully obvious, bro, the criticism I think is not only warranted, it's justifiable, and I do think that you should have to answer for your own decisions and the things in which you are saying, which then kind of gets to this bigger picture about trading Ja, which I don't think that they should do. I think that it'd be very silly. If the Grizzlies decide to move in this direction about trading Ja, I just think that's just dumb. They probably shouldn't do that. I don't even think that the market for Ja is all that crazy, not only because of the amount of money that he's making and teams are just not in position right now to absorb a $40 million contract, even if it means them shipping off a lot of money in the process as well. But also, I just think that there's a lot of question marks behind who Ja is as a player, which I think is a much bigger problem in a bigger picture that I think a lot of people just don't want to acknowledge. Because when I made my video, and I've seen a lot of people really over the last 2 to 3 years, there has been this ongoing belief, or at least this ongoing defense of trying to just, shield Ja of any form of criticism by blaming the organization, blaming the head coach, blaming his teammates. And I do think that some of that blame is warranted, like Dylan Brooks, like my nigga, like Dylan Brooks justifiably deserves criticism. Triple J justifiably deserves criticism with the way in which he fouls. It's ridiculous. Even when it comes to the coaching and the coaching style last year, not involving Ja Morant in many actions with pick and roll and just going away from that identity, especially without giving a heads up to Ja to let him understand what exactly we're doing moving forward. I think all of that is very, very understandable. But that does not remove very clear criticism that should be given to Ja as a player and as someone who, quite frankly, is underachieving by many regards from what we saw not only early in his career, but in his second or third season as well, bro. I need people to really comprehend and lock in for a second that Ja came into this NBA and very, very, very early on, third year in the league, 27 points per game, 7 assists, 49% from the field, 34% from behind the arc, and then went into the playoffs that year, and I think he had an all-around really good playoff run as well in 2022. So you're going from that status. Also keep in mind, this is a player, second overall pick in 2019, and at some point as fans, we're really going to have to go back and readdress this 2019 draft class because my goodness, Zion and Ja Morant, and even RJ Barrett to an extent as well, well how underwhelming a lot of these players were. Like, you can even say DeAndre Hunter, Darius Garland can't stay healthy either. Jared Culver is not even in the league anymore. Cam Reddish is not in the league either. Yeah, this is actually a very questionable draft class in like the first 10 selections. But to kind of see how everything is manifested for a player of Ja Morant's status, it's not just the fact that he's immature off the floor, but it's also that his game has not matured either on the floor. Like, we all know the archetype that Ja is, so we also know which ways he should improve. And the fact that like he's in year 7 right now, and we all know his strengths and weaknesses, and we all know how all of this is going to pan out. Like, we know the end of the story of Ja Morant because we've seen it before. And if anything, he's expediting the process, but not only putting his body on the line, he's out there just jumping and dunking and landing awkwardly, but all the other off the court antics that he's doing as well, from obviously the other suspensions with him handling a firearm, but then here we are now where he's basically beefing with the organization. We know how all of this ends. The numbers are much worse than I think people realize as well. Like, his finishing isn't even as good as you would assume that it would be as someone who is this hyper athletic type of guard. So far this year, it's bad. 39% from the field. Oh my God. Oh my goodness. That's crazy. 39% from the field, 14% from behind the arc. But this is really what I want to show. So when he's getting 5 feet from the basket, only 54% 5 feet, and then everything else is just bad, bro. Like 33%, 19%, 42 isn't that bad on his middies, but non-restricted, like in the paint, non-restricted, sub 50%. Like, these are all really, really, really bad numbers. Really bad numbers, bro. And the amount of like 3-point shots that he's attempting just doesn't make any sense for someone like who's not a 3-point shooter. You're not a 3-point shooter. We all know how this ends. We've seen it so many times, and he's not even better than the players that came before him. He's not better than Derrick Rose. He's not better than John Wall. He's not better than Russell Westbrook, but we all know how this story goes once you get past a certain age. Either it's going to end with injuries, or you're going to get to a point in your career where you're not as explosive and you have to start relying more on jump shot shooting and more skills. And if you don't possess them, then what are you as a player? Which is a huge reason why when everybody's talking about they just need to trade him now, like, what team really wants Ja? Like, strip the immaturity stuff off the court. Put that to aside for a second. As a player, bro, what team would want Ja Morant? Especially a team that can contend or put him in a situation to where he would be happy with. Because if you just like look at the teams in the NBA, like, it does not make any sense. Maybe the Clippers, but the Nuggets are not going to do it because they can't financially hold him. Lakers, no. Spurs, no. OKC, no. Philly, no. Chicago, maybe. Milwaukee doesn't have the ability to financially take him on. Detroit, no. Cleveland, no. New York, no. Miami will hold off on that. Boston, no, financially they can't do it. Golden State financially can't do it. Houston can't do it financially either. Even though they need a point guard, they would have to give up a lot to go after to get Ja. Minnesota, no. Orlando, no. Atlanta, no. Charlotte, no. Toronto, maybe, but I don't know if he really would ever want to play in Toronto. Like, we're basically talking about Chicago, Miami, and Jesus Christ, I just thought about it. Ja Morant in Chicago is crazy. Let's put that out there. Everybody was talking about him going to Brooklyn, bro. Ja Morant in Brooklyn, New York, like, be serious. Man, Ja Morant in Miami is also crazy. Ja going crazy in a small market. Man, you put this nigga in South Beach? Bro, hell nah. The only team that would really, I don't even think Portland is a real option either because they're trying to rebuild and they have plenty of guard play. The Clippers, Miami are like the two teams where I could see it potentially happening. But if you're also Memphis, like, you're going to like get a lot to try to get Ja. And I just don't think that is realistic. If you're a small market team like Memphis and you have to rely on a star putting ass in seats to try to sell tickets, like, you're not going to sell Ja just for the sake of selling Ja, even if it might make sense. But the truth of the matter is you're also still running a business, so you're not going to do that. And also at the end of the day, bro, Ja has real like top 20 potential, which is really a shame because it probably should be closer to top 15 at this stage of his career, but he has top 20 potential. I just feel as if like you're making this worse than what it needs to be, especially when you take into consideration not only all the things off the court that you're doing, but the lack of progression of who you are as a player. And that's something that people are deciding just is not to talk about because, of course, we love the drama. But at the end of the day, also just as a player, who Ja Morant is as a player, Like, this is embarrassing. This is like really, really bad. And it's not as if like he's not even on an organization that's like not trying to build around him, because Memphis has done a really good job of consistently finding talent. He's just not taking things serious. And it genuinely sucks to know that in the 2019 draft, the 2 players that were supposed to be the next faces of the league are not living up to the potential just because they are deciding not to take things serious. That is so mind-blowing to me, and it's so upsetting. It's so disappointing. But at the end of the day, if that's who Ja Morant wants to be, that's who he's going to be. If that's who Ja and Zion want to be as players, that's who they are going to be. But also, brother, you put your name on a dotted line and you sign for that contract and you're getting paid $40 million, and it's your actions. It's no one else's actions. It's yours. And so if the media come behind you after you doing some dumb shit and ask you questions about your actions, you getting a hissy fit and being all pissy about, oh, you better go ask them about it. Go ask them about it. Nigga, it's you. You a grown fucking man. So we gonna ask you about it, and you should just answer the questions. It's really not that big of a deal. It's really not. Making this much worse than it needs to be is crazy. Also, pulling a Jimmy Butler saying that my joy is lost is also fucking crazy. My nigga, you got your contract. Jimmy was complaining about not receiving his contract. You got yours. You got a whole franchise that believes in you. So what the fuck are you talking about?